just a few minutes. So just hang out for a second and we'll get started in a few minutes. The thing is, as this way everybody has a microphone. Yeah. Because the person that sits here never has one. Right. Is yours not? If you push on the button. Yeah. No. That should be trying. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Ready? Okay. Ready? Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's great to see you all. I see a few people in the audience that I know, and I want to thank you all for coming. My name is Karen Marin, who, for those who don't know me, I work for Essencional. I'm an advisor and contributor. And today we're here to talk about a project that Essencional does in conjunction with Devlon Digital, and also with the collaboration with Marco Ricchetti, who's on the panel. We do a web analysis. So what it is we want to know what kind of conversations are happening online about niche and artistic perfumery. So not only do we do an analysis that looks globally at the kind of conversations that are happening in the digital environment, but we also simultaneously do a survey that probably some of you have participated in, which is both on a B2B basis and a B2C basis. So we really get an overall view not only of the web in general, but also from the people that follow us and that are specifically interested in artistic perfumery. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Chiara, who's going to tell you just a little bit more about Essencional and what we do. And then I'll tell you a few other things, new developments that are coming from us.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you all to be here. I'm really happy to be here after our third year of web analysis. As Essencional, we are a working group dedicated to the promotion of artistic perfumery. For those who don't know me, I'm in charge of the coordination activities. We have an intense editorial activities since we produce original content about artistic perfumery brands and retailers from all over the world. We are a study center. We produce web analysis and survey. And in our website, we have also our reposting services of all the content that are produced by other sources, other websites, and that we find useful and authoritative. And so if you want to know more about artistic perfumery, you can go to Essencional and you will be updated. I thank all the audience, the panelists that are here today, and a special thanks to the other Essencional contributor. We have here Laurence Clove. She's the chairwoman of other two interesting panel that you can see today and tomorrow, and also Hermano Pico, another contributor. I would also like to thank all the people that contribute to this study, because this year we decided to put together not only data from web analysis and survey, but also insights from other professionals of this industry. So I really thank them for their support and cooperation. Above all, I would like to thank Silvio Levi that made it possible.
Oh, very sweet. So Essencional, we're sort of the natural extension of Essence. It was a project that Silvio Levi founded 5 years ago to continue the spirit of Essence, to nurture artistic perfumery, to help it to grow, to promote it around the world, really. And so we've found over the years that brands have approached us about needing help, having questions. So we've decided recently that we will start offering consulting services. This is a new development for Essencional. So for anyone who's interested in that, please follow up with either Chiara or myself, and we'd be happy to talk to you about specific needs that you may have to grow your business. So, why are we here? We're here for the web analysis. But before I go into that, I just want to say that unfortunately Silvio can't be here today. So we did ask him to record a message, and we would like to play that now so you can hear a message directly from Silvio.
Welcome to everybody. I'm Silvio Levi, Essence co-founder and technical committee president and Essencional founder. I cannot attend today to this workshop because I'm still battling with the severe pneumonia side effects, but I'm happy to be almost here virtually for a brief introduction. Since 4 years, Essencional makes web analytics, social listening, and survey insights. From the data to be presented today by the speaker here, who I thank for their continued cooperation and commitment, I get a very positive attitude toward the future of the niche perfumery market, both by consumer and professional. You will see soon which key points are relevant for the future. I used to say that artistic perfumery is a strange market made by slow movers, because in theory, every consumer would like a fragrance that is unique and best represent him or her, and the growing trend to look for fragrances that are more and more original, less obvious, and not for everyone, can only benefit the overall growth of artistic perfumery business. There is, as we shall see, a demand for quality, originality, and extreme attention to the consistencies of claims made by the brand. Truthfulness, transparency, respect for quality, true creativity, the courage to dare putting your face on it and are factors that consumers will reward more and more, especially in the social. I believe that we are facing a new renaissance of artistic perfumery, which is a perfect time to have listening and interest from a public willing not to conform, curious of new olfactory expressions. There are many new proposals, more competition, more confrontation, more contribution from different cultures, more collaboration with other arts form in synergy with perfumery. The important thing is to be true, clear, authentic, and have a conviction that you are operating in an artistic and experimental field and that you don't have to conform to align with the trends of the moment, but to dare. The goal is to create fragrances that resist trends, become new archetypes, and represent the individual and social changes capable to grant the new consumer expectation and will stay on the shelves for the next 15 years. The time is right. We have been working on it for years, and now we have the right audience. Now it's our turn to amaze and bring to life the new masterpieces of perfumery. Be true, innovative, creative, clear. The market is ready to give due satisfaction to those who can be consistent, mission conscious, that maintain its identity and is aware of what are offering. Please listen and learn how you can be more happy with artistic perfumery. Thank you so much.
So at this point, I'm going to now hand over the microphone to Marco Ricchetti, who is going to share some economic data with you, which is always our opening, and it's always a good message.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Indeed, my task today is to lower the level of creativity of the conference, talking numbers, hard numbers, talking about economic and financial. Fortunately, I'm bringing good news especially for this sector, for the sector of artistic perfumery, and indeed also for, let's call it, the indie or independent part of the market. I mean, small, medium-sized and enterprises that are not owned by investment funds or multinationals. So what I've been trying to do is to answer to questions that managers and also observers in many industries are asking themselves about. How did we recover after the pandemic? Was the pandemic a disaster? And we are on the good track now to recover from this disaster or not? And indeed, in many industries, the pre-COVID level of revenues or profits is not yet being achieved. That's quite a bad problem for many sectors. So, in order to answer or to provide at least a tentative answer to this question, we have been using the Essencional database on the companies operating the artistic perfumery that include more than 100 different companies of all size and all type and subsectors. So what has been the answer looking at the numbers? Well, as I said, the answer was clearly, even surprisingly, at least from my viewpoint, positive. So, of course, this database, this observatory, is dealing with financial results of the company. So we don't have at the moment the information for 2022. They are not yet available. All of us are waiting for the new financial statements from the company. So we used the 2021 data. That is a good indicator, because tell us what happens in the year after the worst situation of the pandemic. Well, the numbers are those that you see on the left side of the company. Please note these numbers are specific to the artistic perfumery sector. This is not about cosmetics in general or perfumery in general. Well, the database is also able, of course, to separate the big companies or the companies that have been acquired over the past years by the multinationals and the independent companies. You see, the independent companies have been experienced a growth in 2021, a level of revenue in 2021 that was much higher than in the pre-COVID year, in 2019. Well, big number. As I said, many industries didn't reach the same level yet. I work a lot in the fashion business. In the fashion business in 2021 was still 12% below the level of revenues of 2019. So plus 23.5% for the independent companies is a big number. Of course, if we look at only if we only look at the big companies in the artistic perfumery business, those that have been acquired, we have a small number of them, because maybe you know that in some cases the multinational has acquired the companies and kept the company as separate legal entity. So in this case we have the balance sheet, so we can have the numbers. In other situations they are being completely merged, so we don't have the separate information for these brands. This, of course, is only for the companies that are a separate legal entity. Well, they were pretty quick and able to take advantage of this general positive trend of the market. Of course, if you have huge, financial capacity, you can push a lot and take advantage of all the positive situation. But again, 23.5% is a great number for small and medium-sized companies. Well, of course, I'm not trying to sell you the idea that everything is good for everyone. That it was a good wedding situation or whatever, a bonanza for everyone. You see in the chart below that on the right side, colored in blue, you have the growth rate of the positive companies. You see that there are some of them. Again, these are the independent companies without the big fat guys. There is a small number of companies that experienced a huge growth. Some of them went to 200%, something like that. But on average, on this side of the chart, you find very good performances. But of course, we have also companies that were not able to take advantage of the situation. And these, of course, tell us that are serious challenges. You need, when something changes, as apparently the mindset about artistic perfumery has changed in the market during the pandemic, you need good strategies to take advantage of that. you need to maybe to change some of your operational attitudes, etc. But on average, so the situation was very, very positive. Another interesting point is what you find on the right side, because you know that growth is good, but the real interest of all the companies, you know, is the last number in the balance sheet. In this case, we are talking about operational revenue, the EBIT. So it is earnings before paying the interest and before taxations. Well, no need to go in details about what is the meaning of this element. So, but if we compare the situation before the pandemic and after the pandemic, first of all, you see that the difference between the big companies is not, and the independent company is not such a so big. And by the way, which is interesting, if we, I don't want to say names in this analysis, but if you look at the number of the brands owned by the multinational, you see a pretty interesting number of companies that still in 2021 have a negative profit. And another small group of these big companies that just reached a positive profit in the final year, but in all the previous, the earlier years, they are recording year after year a negative profit. So losses, you know, negative profit means losses. Well, so again, I think this is a good news. What we are seeing here with this number, that indeed the growth is much easier for the big companies that are part of multinational. But I mean, this is not surprising, you know. If you have a couple of thousand of stores around the world selling your brand, it's not complicated to, when the market recovers, to take immediately advantage of this growth. On the other hand, we have this good news about the profit level. The last point I would like to look at is, we have seen that the average level of profits is more or less the same in big companies and independent brands. But is there, you know, I'm an economist, I like statistics, I like to draw lines or whatever, make a calculation, etc. So is there any correlation in terms of size? So if we take only the independent companies, in the chart on the right side, there are only independent companies, is there an advantage of being big? Well, what is the answer? Yes, indeed, in a way, because you see the 3-point isolated point over there. They are the 3 largest companies among the small and medium-sized companies, and definitely they are on the right side of the chart. So it means that they have some of the higher profits. But then, if you go down to all the others, you see that being micro, small, or medium-sized doesn't make so much difference in terms of what is the level of profits you can achieve. So I think that also this point is a quite interesting topic. Just another disclaimer, of course, we are looking at the financial statement. So all these companies are limited companies. So we don't have the companies that are made only by one person, or they don't have a capital, you know. That's the point. Well, so the situation under the sky is quite good at the moment. But as Silvio said very clearly in his introduction, and as you can see in the left side chart, we have in front of big challenges. Companies can take the right direction and take advantage of the general attitude of the market, or they can left behind, as the company on the left side of the chart. Well, so we have these type of challenges. I think that from what Filippo will say in a minute, we will get a few hints about how these challenges can be met. And there is another point that I want to. Let me tell you, I already seen the slides of Filippo, so I'm very happy for that. There is another interesting point in his presentation. You will find, if it is still there, hopefully you will not cut it, let's say, the perspective in terms of growth for 2022 and 2023. So we have the good situation in 2021. Please keep your eyes focused on the slide where there is the results of the survey about the attitude and expectation of the companies about 22 and 23. It's another very interesting number. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. So now I think I will hand it over to Filippo, and he'll take you through the presentation.
Thank you very much, Karen. And thank you, Marco, for the introduction to our slides. So this is a long story, as already Karen and Chiara told to us. This is the 4th edition of this interesting journey. Our research aims to keep monitored and provide valuable information, first to the community, so to you today. Since 2019, we have monitored more than a huge amount of data, as we see from the slide. So more than 3,500 keywords. What is a keyword, just to clarify? Is the way users are searching on search engine on the web for valuable information. So when we are Googling, we are entering keywords on the search bar, just to make it clear. And the volume of these keywords that we are intercepting every month is incredible. We are talking about of more than 20 million keywords per month. So a huge amount of data. And then we have another data source that is pretty interesting, that are mentions. And what are mentions? Are references or notification of a brand, a person, on the social media. And this methodology is called social listening. And we monitor since 2019 more than 700,000 mentions on the web. So we are looking and categorize all the mentions across social media. So let's start with the first big numbers. So on the left, we see all the searches about niche perfumery that we intercept, and we are talking about more than 6 million of them. And from that number, 60% of this number is made of user searches brand related. That included name of brands. And we see a consistent data also on mentions, where almost the 50% of mentions included the brand name inside of them. If we compare the niche with the mass market in terms of searches, we see that for general terms, the niche is growing faster in terms of pace to the mass. And if we drill down to the niche and we focus on this side, let's say, of the world, we see that if we compare the generic search term for niche with searches that included the brand names, we still see a growth on the second one. And the growth is pretty interesting. Talking about conversations, we can see from the map that North America region is still the place where most of the conversations are happening on social media, with a small increment year on year. On the second position, we see UK, with less than half of the conversation if compared with North America. But what we can discover here and we can notice here is that we have a growth rate that is really fast, with 84% year on year. In third position, we find South Asiatic countries, France and Africa region. On the Africa, we can notice a slightly decrease of mentions year on year, but the numbers is still pretty high. And on France, instead, we have a similar pattern to UK, with a growth of 57% year on year. That is pretty huge, I would say, even if the number is small if compared with UK and North America. And finally, we have all the others.
Okay, so I contacted a few people when we saw these numbers to sort of understand a little bit better. So Francois Nicolier is a specialist in the Africa market, and he specifically told me that there's growth coming out of Nigeria, Kenya. For any of you who were here last year, he was on my panel about the opportunity in Africa. So I kind of expected to hear this from him, but the countries, Senegal and Mozambique, were new to me in terms of growth coming from there. Clayton works with Fragrances of the World, that's Michael Edwards, and he evaluates many of the launches. So he's based in Australia. So here you have someone from a different part of the world that is recognizing the fact that there's growth coming in all of these markets, including, again, Middle East, Latin America, and Australasia, as he pronounced it. And then the last one is Uli Lang, who is a brand founder who's present here. And he mentioned specifically to me Latin America and Africa as new markets. So I think what's interesting is you have people from 3 different geographic zones that are they're basically saying that this is where the growth is coming from. So they're authenticating that this is the truth.
In terms of mentions, what are the digital channels that are actually growing faster? And we can notice that Twitter is still the place where people are talking about niche perfumery for sure. But if we go down the list, we see that blogs and online news sites are having an incredible fast growing pace, with 34% for blogs and 21% of increment year on year for online news sites. If we compare TikTok with Instagram in terms of a set of hashtag, we can see that TikTok is still the place where these hashtags are happening more often for sure, especially if compared with Instagram. TikTok has 400 millions of counting for this hashtag. Instead, Instagram has only 2 million, so it's a really small number if compared.
And just one thing I want to mention also on some of the numbers, which we saw that there was a decrease in Africa, but Instagram is one of the most important social media platforms in Africa, and I think it's because of privacy laws that we can't get the data there. So when you see that there's a decrease in Africa, it's not necessarily that there is a decrease, it's just that we can't measure from Instagram because it is an important platform. The other thing just to mention is, I think if you look back on that slide, if you go back later and look at it, I think there was a number with China, and we have to also realize that China has their own platforms that we aren't measuring. Again, Francois Nicolier justifies that Twitter and Instagram are key platforms in Africa. And Yosh Han is, she is very involved in digital, and again, she's a known name and was on a panel last year all about digital. And I think that what's important that she's saying here is that brands really have to understand who their target audience is, and that's the social platform that they need to be present on. So if your target is a alpha generation or a Gen Z, then yes, of course it makes sense to be on TikTok. But if your target market is older, like 30s plus, it may not be the right place. Now, if it is the right place, and you're 45 or 50 and you're writing the content for TikTok, you may not be relevant. You may not quite understand how to approach that platform. So her recommendation was that you should hire someone who is of the age of the target audience to be generating the content. And then I have another person this person's based in the US, Marissa Tan Sanchez. She's in brand development. And when I said, what's the most important social media platform in the US? She says TikTok Reels. And now, of course, right now, there's talk about banning TikTok in the US. We'll see what happens. But for now, TikTok is key, and Perfume Talk, if you look at the hashtag Perfume Talk, it's just overwhelming, the activity that's on this hashtag. Okay, I think Dana's in the audience, but she had a lot to tell me about the platforms, and really saying that YouTube is becoming much more educational. Instagram is so visual, and it really is artistic, so it's something that you can really tell the brand story on. And then TikTok, again, mass sales. And here's someone, she's really more, I want to say that she's more focused on what's happening in the US. Perfume Talk, as I just mentioned, 2.3 billion views, which is really hard to get your head around how big that is. And then half of those viewers end up buying. So her analysis was that if you take that number versus other selling platforms, including in-person, YouTube, and Instagram combined, TikTok is still generating more sales. And just back to Yosh again, that content has to be unique. Unique content works well. The best content is authentic, and it's educational, and builds the community.
Okay, we decided to ask for information to our two content creators, Sinister and Alex Perfume, that had a huge audience, because if we think about Sinister, she has 650,000 followers on TikTok, for example, and Alex Perfume 1.2 million followers. We wanted to understand more how was their growth on social media, how their audience was composed, and also the trends that they intercepted. when we talk about social media as TikTok or Instagram, we should not forget that we're talking about, for Instagram, for example, of a social media that has 2.3 million monthly active users, and about TikTok, 1 million active users per month. So it is a huge opportunity for the brands to have resonance, to enrich their audience, but for sure brands that want to be present on social media, and especially on TikToks, can't be present in an institutional way, like Facebook or YouTube, as we have seen. So it is best to choose the right content creator, and the right content creator has a big responsibility in providing information about the brands. The growth for Sinister and Alex Perfume, that we will see later, was exponential in the last year. They both started posting around the lockdown in 2021 for Matilda, for example. And the important information that we had from them is related to a forecast of growth. Because, for example, Sinister told us, I expect that content creation on TikTok will increase in the same way that happened in the last 5-10 years for beauty brands. Beauty brands started to be present on this kind of social media with the people that started to understand more about makeup and skincare, but then we have seen a spreading of content creation, and everybody produced this. And really interesting information from my point of view is that, for example, Sinister think that it's something that will happen in the next year also for independent perfumery. Could you go before? Okay, thanks. About the audience, the most important information that both Matilda Morri and Alex Perfume share with us is that they told us that they see an increasing interest that, of course, has a correlation with their growth, but an increasing interest and a continued interest from their audience. And they told us that also retailers provide them a feedback that now people that are entering in independent perfumery shops are people that have never entered before. Matilda, for example, provided us an example that metalheads people, so people that listen to metal music, that probably before never went in an independent perfumery shop, now thanks to the way that can understand that perfume provide them an experience that can be associated to their life, started to attend our words and to discover fragrance in general. Referring to the audience of Matilda, another important information is that, for example, she has a very different audience with different interests, and they, of course, share the interest for perfume, but half of her audience is LGBT sensitive, and she has also neurodivergent people or people with other types of depressive eating disorder that can find relief and comfort for perfume. So I think that the most important message is that people that follow content creators are understanding that a fragrance is not just a product that can be associated as a beauty product, as something that can be used to be more seductive, but it is a product that can choose people to express themselves and research and meet this need of expression of themselves that is characteristic of Generation Z, for example. About the trend, Matilda told us that for the next season she will foresee a growing interest for lactone, ultra-clean perfume that is natural after the COVID, when people are looking always for fragrance that are related to a sense of hygiene as well, and perfume with linden notes. If we think about what Alex Perfume told us, he shared the vision of Sinister about the exponential growing. He has a different audience because his audience is more homogeneous and is mainly interested about perfume, for example, and is a male audience in prevalence, since men are around 70%. Regarding the trends, Alex Perfume confirmed us one thing. The trends start with the will of the content creator. So the trend is what the content creator talks about. And so to wrap up, the most important messages that we derive from this interview, I can tell that for sure content creators has having a really important role. They are the focal point in terms of knowing more information about artistic perfumery, so people know more about artistic perfumery. I don't want to spoil what Filippo will talk after, but we will see that a lot of topics that have been covered by content creators became mainstream, for example. And they become also a focal point for information about brands, about launches, and they also has the power to influence the purchase of fragrance. So, Filippo.
So, thank you, Chiara. The further methodology that we use to gather information from the essential community this time were surveys. And as Karen already told to us, we investigated both the business and the customer standpoint of view. For customers, we intercepted more than 400 respondents. The 90% of them are coming, the responses are coming for foreign countries, and they are, let's say, equally divided between masstige and niche lovers and niche lovers. Only 1% declared to be masstige lovers, only masstige lovers. On the other side, for professionals, we received, we can see a distribution of responses that is more equal between foreign countries and Italy, and the audience is divided. Mostly the responses are coming from retailers, 40%. Then we find brand owners, and finally buyers and journalists equally divided. This is the slide that Marco was talking about before. So in terms of sales trends in 2022 and sales forecast for 2023, we can see that the business community is pretty coherent in saying that they have seen a strong recovery. Almost half of the respondents told to us that they have seen a strong recovery, and 31% declared to have a recovery that is okay. For the future, they see almost the 80%, more than 80% of respondents are seeing for this year between high to normal growth. So there is an extremely positive sentiment on the market. And Also, from the customer standpoint of view, they declared that in 2022, they almost half, more than half of them declared that they spend more on buying new perfume on average. And the retail sales, more than 50% of the retailers told to us that 70% of the sales depend on niche perfumery. So a huge slice of their business is coming from this field, and is pretty interesting. With the searches this year, we put under the lens the journey of the niche lover. And if in 2019, we analyzed the first step, the first stage of the journey, we call it the interest phase, where users are looking on the internet for information like what is niche parfum, so really basic information. We detect that there is a second step that we call awareness, where they are looking more specific information like perfume finder by notes, perfume name brand, so they start to know the name of the brands in this niche. And finally, this year, we concentrate our effort on the knowledge phase, the one where we can find really mature customers. And when a customer is ready to become mature, his glossary or her glossary is growing and expanded. For example, in terms of the name of olfactory notes and families, they start to talk more about these olfactory notes. And here we map, on the graph on the left, we map the declared bestsellers olfactory notes by business with the most popular by customers. Here we are not seeing the most popular by customer instead, but just to give you the information, citrus, amber, and woody amber are in the top 3 for the customers. And also in terms of searches for families and olfactory notes, we see an incredible increase with 35% more searches year on year.
So taking another quote from the community, again, Uli Lang, he said to me that brands are tending to use top perfumers, and mainstream fragrance houses have now embraced indie niche, and that was not the case in the early 2000s. I think even if you walk the show, you'll see, I saw a few brands yesterday where I was surprised it was a brand that I don't know, and yet they're working with a top perfumer. So this is definitely the case. So it's a clear observation of what's happening. Lucas, I can't do this last name, but anyway, Lucas, Chemist in a Bottle, he's a blogger, and he's an observer of what's happening in the industry. And he said to me that what he sees is that, brands were taking they were more risky with how they were approaching creation. And that today you have the greater majority that is playing it safe. And you see things that are what we would call a crowd pleaser, because they're looking for the sure sale rather than something that is really an artistic representation of what the brand wants to express, how they want to express themselves. So we see a trend in citrus and floral and easy fragrances. And then when I spoke to Clayton about the launch, so that's more what the taste level is. But when we look at what the launches are, and here it's important to understand that this number is global, so it's not just niche artistic, it's everything. But the trend is towards floral, which is, again, very traditional, and the woody group, including woody amber, mossy woods, and dry woods. Dana, again, she talked to me about trends that she sees in terms of the types of fragrances that are being launched, in terms of like a thematic. So, and I certainly saw this when I walked the floor yesterday. So there's this trend in sort of spiritual, esoteric, kind of a mystical feeling, if you will, with these brands that we mentioned here, Nocturnal Alchemy, Solstice Scents. There's quite a few upstairs if you take a look as well. And then Negative Space, which I think this is quite interesting. Negative Space is like a brand that doesn't want to have a logo, or that is rather anonymous. So you have something called Missing Person from a brand called Fleur. Byredo, big brand, just launched a fragrance called Eyes Closed. So it's sort of this lack of you know, how can I express it in English now? It's like not having an identity, or having the flexibility of having multiple identities. And then the ugly aesthetic, which is sort of not the very low-key packaging, and not trying to create something that's extremely aesthetic that you want to put on the vanity.
Going back to searches, we have found that people are experimenting for originality. And this is another sign of the knowledge stage of the user. And for originality, we have found two evidences. A huge amount of searches for concepts like layering, so the usage of more than one perfume at a time to create something original, and the searches for collection. It seems like people are looking to create wardrobes of perfumes to choose from every day. And also from the survey, what arises is that 36% of customer respondents bought 2 or 3 perfumes in 2022. But the incredible data is in the second row, because almost 30% of them declared that they bought more than 7 perfumes in 2022, and it's incredible. Another evidence from searches that arises the demand for mini formats. So people are looking on the internet for travel sets, for discovery sets, and the small formats. I don't know, Karen.
Again, you know, this is an observation that is definitely seen in the community, that most brands now, especially if they launch with multiple scents in a collection, so you see many that launch with more than 3, like 5, 7, and so they're coming out with discovery sets, which really was necessary during the pandemic, and this is an alternative to actually going into the store. However, the brand store is still important, which we'll go on to that later.
Yeah, and if we compare what we have found in terms of searches and answer to our surveys in terms of small formats, we have found an interesting difference between genders in the answer, because women declare to prefer small formats such as 10 and 30 millimeters bottles. Instead, male declare to strongly prefer the 100 millimeters, for example. It seems like there is a demand from the customer point of view of these small formats, but we asked to ourselves, okay, is there an answer from the business community? And what we have found from the survey is that only 36% of retailers still not have offering for smaller formats, and 68% of them have no offering of samples. So there is a demand from customers, but there is a partial answer from the business. And also from this slide, we can see the same pattern also for brand owners. What arises is that it seems like that Italian brand owners are more ready to answer to these requests of smaller formats. And knowledge means also training. And what we have discovered is that there is an increase in the searches of artistic perfumery schools on the internet. For example, for Isipka, that is in the first position, we have seen a growth of 80% year on year in the searches.
And this quote to say that not only is it for the formal training, but the consumer is still interested in learning more about perfumery. So we do see that there's still quite a selection of online perfumery classes, which whether it's from an organization like the Institute for Art and Olfaction, or whether it's coming from a brand and a master class.
And the niche perfumery world is not something that customers seems to me only when talking about an accessory for going outside their houses. There is also an incredible increase in the demand and purchases of ambient fragrances if compared with 2021, with more than 40% increase year on year. And this is pretty interesting. Another concept that we have investigated in the survey this year is sustainability. Sustainability is clearly a trend topic right now for every sector. But what we detect with the survey is that both customers and business are coherently saying that sustainability is an important value, but it doesn't have an impact on the final decision of purchasing or not an artistic perfume. So again, 45% of users said sustainability is an important value, but 86% of business is saying the customer would not refrain from buying non-sustainability perfumes. The rise of sustainability happen also on the mentions on social media with smaller numbers, for sure, because the numbers are incredibly smaller. But we have seen emerging interest in upcycling raw materials such as rose, cypress leaves, etc., and refilling. Sustainable practices that were coming only, we were seeing it only on mass brands that now are coming to the niche brands too. And in terms of purchase drivers, from the searches, what we have discovered is that the price is still the king, with more than 21,000 searches. In second position, we see the popularity. So the popularity is really important in the choice of buying or not a perfume. And in third position, the persistence. And we will see that also from survey, the persistence is a key driver for buy or not perfume. And finally, the opinion. So people are looking for the opinion about perfume on the internet. For the same topic from the survey, what arises is that for B2C, the three most relevant choice priority dimensions are being evoked, so the sense of well-being that a perfume is able to rise, the persistence, and finally, originality. For the customers, instead, we see a slightly mismatch of view, with the first position for persistence, then well-being evoked, and finally, originality. For the business point of view, the attractive levers for the public are creative, innovative projects, product storytelling, so the ability to create a story behind or around a perfume, and finally the packaging. But always from the business standpoint, it seems like the advice of the sales, so the physical experience is still relevant. The human-to-human experience, let's say, is still relevant in 66% of respondents. And also the perfumery stores, as already Karen told to us, are extremely important. So, okay, the digital is a support, but the physical store is still really important, at least from the business. But here is the consumer, from the consumer point of view. Instead, from the business point of view, again, the store is extremely important, with the 76% of brand owners that declare that more than 50% of their revenue still depends from stores. And from the customer standpoint of view, 68% of them prefer to shop in independent perfumeries, and 40% prefer to buy from e-commerce site of the brand. So let's conclude with some forecast that we will discuss right now. So first question, will digital increasingly become a tool to support the physical store?
Well, I think that one thing that we can say is that when we went through the pandemic, there was a rise in the need to have like a omni-channel, like to have one channel, so that you have a message coming from digital that's supported in the store. And of course, during the pandemic, it was much more important to have the message coming from digital. But the thing is that it's still key because it tends to drive the interest starts sometimes online, and then the desire for information before the consumer goes into the store. And then when they go into the store, then they can have the full experience, which of course you can't smell online. That's something we still haven't resolved. So you have the discovery kit, which is the best thing that you can get, but you can't get it through your computer. So at some point you have to physically have the contact with the product. Digital will always be supporting stores, and for convenience, certainly it's something that you don't have time to go to the store, you know what you want, you're going to replace it, or you decide that you're going to blind buy, and then you can order online. One comment, really important one that Clayton observed, is that the digital landscape is really changing. And the Fragrances of the World company is very much involved in finding digital solutions. So they've taken the wealth and the information from the database, that Michael Edwards' database has over 40,000 fragrances. So you can imagine. And they've partnered with the Pouge Group to work on Wiki Parfum, which is an online fragrance finder that's free. And also now there's another development which is called EAN Knows, and this is a tool that you can use with participating brands where you can scan either the UPC or the QR code, and it gives you the information of what's in the fragrance. So you've got a wealth of information at the fingertips, and this is something that is a digital evolution that didn't exist before. It didn't even exist 5 years ago. So it's going to really move the needle. The other thing that is quite interesting is that there's another application that they've worked on that is specific to the China market, and it's now on Tmall, and this is a digital tool that's going to help visually show you what the fragrance should smell like. So it's images of the ingredients that help the consumer to have an understanding of what the fragrance actually is. And when you think that the estimates are that only about 5% of the Chinese population is currently using fragrance, and this tool should help them to understand fragrance and grow, that's a 95% possible increase in consumers.
So, as we have seen, sustainability is not a lever, still a lever for the user to decide or not to purchase a perfume. But will it be able to change in the near future the consumer habits?
Yeah, on this one, what I would, from the observations that I've made, and I do a lot of, I would say, kind of grassroots digital or online monitoring. I review about, I don't know, 20 websites and forums a week, and quite a few influencers, YouTubers, social media all over, that what we see is that this issue, the question of sustainability is, it really depends somewhat on the country. So Anglo-Saxon countries, US, very much focused on sustainability and protecting the environment. However, if you shift to other countries, it's less of an issue, at least right now. And regionally, the knowledge that I've seen is that we're talking about China and Middle East. And this could be changing, so, you know, I'm telling you this now, but it could change tomorrow. The other thing that we're starting to see is that more companies are trying to come up with refillable packaging. It's just that the thing is that you've got to get the consumer to then get used to buying a refill. And initially buying the initial package and then buying the refill. So the things that are challenging is, as a retailer, how do you merchandise this? And do you have the shelf space or the drawer space to merchandise it all, which means it's easier to merchandise or to stock it if you're stocking it online. But this is something that goes to sustainability. And you think back to a brand like Terry Mugler that it launched in '92, and I think even before 2000, they had a refilling station. But even then, the retailers could barely figure out how to merchandise it and make it attractive, and then to get the consumer to come back to refill their bottle. So there's a lot of questions to be answered in terms of how do you make this all happen, and how do we make it a habit that the consumer will then follow.
So we anticipate that there is an increasing need to live and experience fragrance on a daily basis. But is there any likelihood that fragrance routine will emerge in the near future?
Okay. So here, I think that one thing is really interesting to see is the number of brands that are now starting to talk about mood-enhancing elements or the well-being of the use of fragrance. And this is something that probably a lot of us already knew that intuitively, but it was never used in a marketing sense. And now it is. And one of my panelists said to me, but this is like aromatherapy. It's just that now it's packaged differently. And in a way it is, but there's a lot of science behind it. And I think when you get the science behind it, especially with a younger generation who's very digitally connected and gets all their information off of a tablet or their phone, that this justifies what is being said. In the other thing, fragrance routine, well, we see that people are using fragrance much more than they ever did before, and I think that part of the increase there is that there are the varieties of sizes. So there's more interest in building a wardrobe, which, I mean, when I was a buyer back in the early 2000s, the idea of creating a fragrance wardrobe was very, it was already a concept, but it was hard to get people to shift from their signature scent to having more choices. And when you think, you know, you don't put the same shoes every day, you don't put the same clothes every day, why would you put the same fragrance every day? But some people like to do that. And some people do have a signature look. But I think that we're going to see more flexibility, much more interest in fragrance, much more appreciation of fragrance, and a greater embracing having just a diverse collection to choose from.
Will education be a catalyst for emerge of new professions, in addition to that of the nose, in your opinion?
Okay, my opinion on this is that, as if my opinion really matters, but anyway, my opinion, to tell you what I think, is that a lot of it's going to be driven by demand, okay? So, because professions come when there's the demand to have it. So I think that you know, I didn't even know, when I was in my 20s, I didn't even know that there was a profession such as a fragrance evaluator or a perfumer. How do you become a perfumer? It was very much a mystery and kind of hidden. And so there's much more information that's out there now. So I think that the more that is out there, the more interest is coming. And when we see that people are interested, and then we see the growth that in the searches for an institute like ASIPCA, that this is a really good sign for the industry, because it means that more people want to get into it. But one statistic that someone in the industry told me is that there's more astronauts than there are perfumers. And I think that's really interesting to see, or to understand and grasp, but this is when you think about formal study, formal education, going to an institute such as ISIPCA or the Grass Institute. But now we see that the people are coming into the profession from so many different ways, and that also within the profession, there's more and more transparency in terms of what are the types of jobs and where are these professions. And the more that people are using fragrance, then the more you're going to have different types of jobs that need to be used, because there will be a need to either develop more, to come up with new formats, to come up with new ways to market, if TikTok goes away in the US, you know there's another platform that's going to come up, so people are going to have to be creating content in a different way, in a different format. So then this will create a new type of profession that we don't even know what it is yet. I don't know if anyone else on the panel wants to comment. No? Okay.
Final question. So, as we said, this year we concentrate our focus on the last step of the user journey in the niche sector, so the knowledge phase. But will the number of more experienced and aware customers grow in the future?
You know, I think that it has been. I mean, this is something that definitely with the evolution of digital, you know, I mean, it didn't exist in the way it is now. 20 years ago, we weren't as connected to any tool, any kind of a device. We didn't have it. So now you want to know what price is this perfume? You just put it on your phone. We didn't have that 20 years ago. So the amount of information that's available is growing all the time. And not only is it practical information, but it's what is the ingredient? Where did it come from? How is it sourced? the amount of people that are asking these types of questions is growing all the time. And they go into the stores, and sometimes, you know, hopefully not often, but sometimes they know more than the salesperson. So this is something that you have to anticipate it's going to happen. And I think for anyone who is a retailer out there, you need to really concentrate on education of your staff and yourself to be ready to answer the questions of the consumer who comes to you.
It is something that we have seen interviewing content creators that confirmed this to us, especially if we think about layering, what we have found about the increase of searches, mentions in terms of layering. It is an example of this. People are more aware about artistic perfumery, and also content creators told us that now the audience know what artistic perfumery is, that it exists, and what are the differences. And it is an evolution with respect to our first web analysis. In 2019, we understood that the concept of artistic perfumery was not clear in the mindset of consumers, and things have been changing in this year.
You know, I think that in a strange way, the pandemic actually benefited fragrance. Not that we were all locked up for so long, but the fact that when people did lose their sense of smell, they had a new appreciation for it. And being stuck at home, they wanted their environment to be nice. So this lent to the growth of home fragrance, but also the time that people had to start pursuing interests that they maybe didn't have the time to look into before, or something where they wanted to be entertained and they found a master class online. It's hard to say how it all happened, but there was so much going on that it did actually benefit the whole fragrance industry. And if you see now, if you look at NPD is like a group that does a lot of numbers, and they track sales worldwide. But most of the countries in the world are experiencing at least single-digit, if not double-digit increase in fragrance. And I'll tell you, having been a buyer in the early 2000s, we were lucky if we had like a 5% increase. And so now when you see double digit, it's to me, it's extremely exciting. And there's no sign of it changing, which is another wonderful thing, especially for all of us and all of us working in this industry. So I think that it's just people are more interested, and, you know, God bless them, and hope that they continue to buy and to support the industry, and to also evolve in their taste, that maybe they start with something that's a designer or mass, and then as time goes by, you end up coming into something that's a little more special and unique. Because as one of my panelists said last year, you know, if you think back to what kind of wine you were drinking when you were 20 as opposed to what you're drinking maybe 10 or 20 years later, it's not the same. And so hopefully it'll be the same with fragrance, and that the taste for artistic fragrance will continue to grow. I think we may have time for one or two questions, if there's any questions in the audience. And if not, then we say thank you very much for coming. And I'm just going to give a small plug for my next workshop, which is happening in 2 minutes. Givaudan is coming to promote or to talk about patchouli. So it's a deep dive into patchouli. So if you're interested in ingredients, please stick around. And thank you to all of the panelists for their time, for their study, for their data and preparation.
Thank you.